I mean, would you just look at that level of domination? Not only did Magnus Carlsen, world number 1 and GOAT of chess, win 11 out of 11 games on 11/11 2025, but he did it for the second time this year and the fourth time in his lifetime. No one's come close to that level of domination in this online weekly tournament. All the best chess players in the world battling it out, and this game really shows you why he's something else. He winds up a piece down and still goes on. You're gonna see. This is how the game proceeded. His opponent is 16-year-old Frenchman Marco Materia. He's already nearly 3,000 rated. Incredible. And Magnus takes him seriously. Plays the Catalan opening here, named after his good friend and long-term second, Alan, the chess-playing cat. We see this solid structure, party hat pawn formation, queen developing, and pawn b6 prepares to fianchetto something. We presume the rook. Magnus keeps on developing. Marco now builds the pawn cube, aka the pube. Magnus shaves it, of course. Many top grandmasters do. He goes for another one, and after takes, we're left with this structure. These are known as hanging pawns. Real favourite of Magnus's longtime friend Bertie. Loves playing these structures. We now see pawn e4, and it's very logical. Magnus wants to break up these pawns. Do you take? Do you advance? The point is, if you leave them, they strangle your pieces. If you advance, not so hot. e5 comes. We won't go down the long rabbit hole, but you open this diagonal. It's a bit sensitive. White stands better. Knight d5, the next move for black. Not played though. We get the move of knight to c6. I mean, Marco really knows his stuff, the way he navigates this opening. You could take immediately, best move. But Magnus stops the knight hop. Now bishop e6. Again, he could take, but he goes with the rook move. Rook c8, never comfortable having your queen x-rayed. And now Magnus finally takes. He'd run out of useful waiting moves. He centralizes the knight here. It finally has a square. And after knight d4, hitting the queen, hitting the knight, Magnus could take immediately, but he goes queen d3. We get queen b6, and his hand is now forced, because this one is just strangling the position. Could be on the way here now with the queen supporting. This could come pawn h6. I mean, black has a lot more kind of waiting, improving moves than white does. So Magnus takes. Pawn takes back. Bishop g5, very playable. But before you can say, let's sit down and have a romantic evening by the fire with a glass of red and a board and our good spirits, Magnus gains space there. Now he's dramatically weakened the c3 square, and we see Marco immediately hopping. Great move. Puts a horrible question to white. Do you want to take? We'll have fun with that passed pawn. Even further down the board. Look at the bishop soon to be raking across. So that's not ideal. You could go bishop d2. Strongest move according to the all-powerful engine. But Magnus tries to mix it up with knight g5. Now it's not the best of moves. He's going direct to the throat with mate in 1, but takes is played, giving up the bishop pair correctly, because now the excellent follow-up move is landed on the board. Bishop c4, and Magnus Carlsen winds up trapping his own bishop here, but we've got to analyse why. The queen has 4 sensible squares to go to, and none of them are great. In the game, we see queen d2. But if you step back here, you're running into this kind of check and d3. Huge initiative. So let's wind back. If you go to f5, same check idea. And then the rook can come, the pawn can come soon. So that's why best is queen f3 to keep an eye on this checking move. And the game goes on, but black remains better. Magnus goes queen d2. Again keeps tabs on e2 and the knight check, but now the bishop is running out of room. And the immediate pawn f6 traps it in the best possible way. something like this, and you can play like this as we see in the game. But this time, after this attack, you can block with the rook. This is critical. If white invades, you block with the second rook, and the attack is not nearly as dangerous as we see in the game. However, this move was started with. Magnus now plays bishop f3. Best move, takes more control of the square, prepares king g2. But now when f6 is played, h6 was actually better. It's not as powerful because Magnus gets a pair of rooks off the board and then lands this cute little tactic, rook e1. And if you immediately take, well, you're winning a rook there and you've landed an exchange ahead. So obviously you're thinking, well, what if takes first? Check. Queen takes, then take. Well, now you're mated. Now this line does actually work if you'd played h6 to trap the bishop instead of f6. Because now the pawn's back here and the king has a Luft square here. But that wasn't played. This is the game. Rook f8 on the board, not taking. Great move, calling Magnus's bluff, and bang. That bishop is straight up trapped. And you might be thinking this is the best way to give it up, but no, it's not. The pawn survives in this line, very dangerous, and the black king is fine. Queen can slide over to defend. Bishop's over here. So in the game, Magnus backs up, pawn takes of course, rook recaptures, knight's going to drop, can't quite find a home here, you know, the bishop covers, that's critical. So we get this move on the board here, and now check. It's the line I showed, but with a pair of rooks left the board. So rook f7, no good anymore. King h8 has to be played, but Magnus now gets the invasion with rook e7, and it's suddenly very dangerous. A level position, as you can see, despite the fact that white only has a pawn for a knight, but the exposed king is a problem, and after queen d6, it really starts to come to life here. Because does Magnus take the queens off the board, knight recaptures, win a pawn, play the end game with a couple of pawns for a knight? No, he doesn't. He goes for the more ambitious and completely correct queen e4.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
And it's at this moment that Marco, who's played so well, goes fatefully wrong. But just before I dive into that one, I want to make you aware of a huge sale which is going on right now in the Chestnut store between November 20, December 2nd. Now I've literally got two of these Chestnut boards myself, the Pro and the Evo, although they got tons of good boards, right? And they're just incredibly made, beautiful boards. It's horses for courses with which board you want to get right. So the Pro is this beautiful, ornate, wooden piece, big board, good for just playing people over the board chess, but you can also connect it online and play on your favorite sites, Lichess, chess.com. It connects, so you do the moves on the board, but it comes up online. You can also train with it and so on. Evo, very similar, same functionality like that, but it's also got the built-in AI assistant piece. So then you can do loads of extra training stuff. Really, really cool learning tool. Of course, the big benefit of using these boards is you're playing with over-the-board pieces whilst learning online. So it gives that real feel, much more like tournament kind of play, right? Amazing boards. Use the code EPIC at checkout to get 20% store-wide discount. Obviously follow the link in the description first. So it's code EPIC for 20%, but then use code EPIC extra, all one word, caps lock, to get 30% off the Evo if you want to get that board. But note that you have to order the Evo separately using that code EPIC extra. And then if you want to order anything else, use the code EPIC for the 20% discount on all of that. So you have 2 purchases, 2 orders, 2 shipping. But in case that increases your shipping fees, you know, most areas are free and covered. Well, then you can contact customer services, ask them to merge the order. They should refund that little extra shipping bit, right? Bit convoluted there, but it's the 2 different codes you've got to use if you want to get the Evo or any other normal products. Hope it helps. They're incredible boards. I love them. Got 2 myself, like I say. Do check it out. Link below. Limited time only. Let's dive back here, because in the game we get the move on the board of pawn f5, and it's a mistake. Black should have checked king g2, queen h5. Not an obvious line, but it covers the king and leaves this pawn closed, keeping the king protected. Knight's not yet dropping. Let's run to the game. f5's a big blunder. Can you see the winning shot here? It's queen b7, and you hit the knight on b5 and also the pawn on h7. This is the big problem. How to defend? Well, you have to come over this way. There's a mate, there's a mate in 2 threatened with the queen then on g7. So this was played. Queen g6 looks more natural to cover this pawn here, but the idea of this was you take me here, I take your rook. So Magnus checks, king g8. You still can't win the knight, or the rook drops off the board. So what was played in this position? The only winning move here, it's rook to h3, and it has to go to h3. If it goes to h5, it's queen g6. You cover this checking square and you hit the rook. So if it retreats somewhere now, well, you can save the knight. You know, you decide where to go. So this was the winning move. Magnus can now, after rook d8 here, win this knight, because if you try and save it, this is a checkmate in 1. This is why the rook gives space for the king, but now the knight drops off the board. You could check, but then where's the follow-up after king g2? The c6 square is critically covered. So this was played, you know, looking to check here, for example, setting up the threat, but Magnus is just in time to cover the long diagonal, again threaten these things, so we get the rook stepping up, but now check. King f7 puts up the most resistance. This was played, check. King goes, check, and we saw resigns. Because where to go, this is your only legal move, but then you can simply win the queen, and with it, the game. This is entirely lost, of course. Final position, just unreal that Magnus can win a game despite going a piece down here. Hope you loved this one. Check out Chestnut, link below, incredible boards, and have a look at the video on screen in case you missed Magnus's incredible game against Ali Reza in this very same tournament. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon. Cheers.